everybody. Hope you're awake and ready to go. Well, while he's pulling it up, I'll get started so in the interest of time we have some time for discussion at the end. DataOne is an NSF-funded project, one of the DataNet projects, of which there's a couple others up here as well. And we are a our whole mission, and you'll see it right up there, enabling new science and knowledge creation through universal access to data about life on Earth and the environment that sustains it. What our mission, the way we're approaching it is by leveraging existing infrastructure and existing collections, by going to data centers and repositories that are out there and the myriad software tools that are already designed, and trying to build a structure around that promotes interoperability and also promotes preservation strategies through replication of data. We're focusing on developing this infrastructure in a number of ways, which I'll talk about in just a second. And we know that one of the largest challenges is sociocultural in nature. That is changing the habits and the thoughts that people have towards data and how to deal with it. And it's very important to have the technical solutions, but if we don't change the sociocultural attitudes, technical solutions don't do us a lot of good. Our infrastructure is composed of starting with member nodes. Currently we have 6 online. We have stacks available for people to build member nodes on 4 different technologies, which I can talk about later. But this is where the data lives, and this is where people have it. What we're starting with are existing data centers that are holding large amounts of data, but we are also working with helping people who are wanting to build data centers, providing infrastructure for that. The next component of our cyber infrastructure is our coordinating nodes. And we have 3 coordinating nodes. One's at UC Santa Barbara, one's at University of Tennessee in conjunction with Oak Ridge National Lab, which we refer to as the Oak Ridge campus, and the other is at our primary institution, University of New Mexico. These are places that have set aside terabytes of space for replication and are guiding the organization of our infrastructure across being a federation. The final piece of our architecture has to do with the toolkit. And you'll notice that there's a lot of familiar titles on there, Morpho, Mendeley, My Experiment. It's because we know that these are tools that are already in use by scientists. And working with things that scientists are already using and are familiar is the best strategy, socioculturally speaking, of getting adoption. And so what we've done is we're working with the developers of these tools and finding ways to promote interoperability. I'm trying to stay in my 7 minutes, so I'm going kind of fast. One of the key components of this is what we call the data lifecycle, and the data lifecycle here is what we have chosen as an organization to look at. You'll notice it starts with planning, and on this slide is the tools that we're either coordinating with or releasing. So, for example, the DMP tool, which is from the University of California Digital Library, which is the data management planning tool, they're one of the groups that's involved with that. There's multiple organizations involved with that. That's part of the planning. 1R is something that we're building, having to do with statistical preserving. You'll see DataOne's down there because that's a replication approach. And then discovery, we have a couple different things there, including what we call the DataOne Mercury, which is a site to do federated searching across multiple databases, etc. The second one, you notice a couple more blinked on when I hit it. These are new additions that we're going to add later. So, for example, we're working with Excel. Yes, I know Excel is not the best way to handle data, but the reality of the matter is that's what most scientists are using to handle data. And if we want to be thinking about long-term preservation, we need to be thinking about how they're currently collecting and storing their data, where they're doing it, and thinking about ways to have plugins that will work with what they're familiar with. Maybe over time we can have an intervention and we can move to other things. But at this point in time, this is a reality that we're dealing with, all of us. And then we're talking about adding morpho down there on description in terms of for metadata. In terms of education and training, this is how we're approaching the whole concept of tackling the sociocultural issues. And so, for example, we have summer internships. These are for scientists and data professionals of the future to be working with us on things that we're doing that are sort of cutting edge. Then we also have training and conferences and workshops, which have to do with working with people who are currently working. These are a list of some of the places we've done it, for example, supercomputing, because we know that we aren't working just with scientists, we aren't working just with librarians, we aren't working just with data centers, we're working with a broad range of community that's involved in dealing with preserving data, especially large data sets. We also have things such as an implementation workshop, where we are helping people prepare to be a member node, working with ESA, working with AGU, putting programs there, working with ESEP, which is not on the slides, my apologies, building educational modules, and also have developed a graduate level course that's an intensive boot camp over the summer to bring people up to speed, which is open to both students or practicing scientists or practicing librarians. This is an idea of the kinds of modules that we've got online and available, talking about things like data management plans, etc. What you'll notice is we are not pushing policy on anybody because we're a federation trying to build on what exists. We're letting people write policy for their communities. We have some suggestions, we have some ideas of best practices, but we are not saying that anybody has to do it a specific way beyond things that have to align for the interoperability issues. This is a little bit about the Environmental Management Institute that we had in terms of the kinds of things that we covered: managing data files, creating databases and web portals, data analysis and visualizations, and techniques for managing, analyzing, and visualizing geospatial data. It's a very, very intensive time. How do we talk about collaborations? Just DataOne itself is very collaborative. Here you see what institutions are represented on the team itself, and some of our sponsors. We have a very, very, very broad swath that we're cutting, and this represents everything from computer scientists to scientists who are actually doing the work, to librarians and a very, very wide range of administrators, etc. Just to kind of tell you what we look like over time, our team looked like this in year 1, year 2, and year 3. This is at our annual retreat, and so we are growing. But what this doesn't represent is how our approach to going out to the communities is currently propagating the idea of being aware of data issues, being aware of good data management practices, and trying to come to a way that the communities can get together and figure out what works for them, because that is the way we'll get adoption. And I'll stop there.
Thank you very much.